I'm good, thank you.
You're good?
Yeah, thank you.
You guys doing the weather today?
We are. So I'm just laying some sepia into her hair real quick, and then we'll start on that leather jacket. And I can go back and shade a little more, but for right now, I'm just getting some color in there. Okay, now, are you ready with your black marker? We're going to start and work our way down, referring to this reference. So I'm going to start up at the neck, and here we go. So I'm going to go down the collar. I'm going to leave a reflection there towards the top of the collar, just a little reflection. I'm going to come around the other side. Now on our reference, her hair is covering this up. So I'm just going to leave little highlights from time to time. Okay, now what we're going to do is come over into this area of the bodice, and you can see that there is the edge of the front closure is catching the light. So what I do when I do leather is I try to find geometric shapes. So here we see from the shoulder, there's kind of a triangle shape up on the top of the shoulder. There's a strong triangle highlight here, but this is pretty much in shadow or very dark here. So that whole area, I'm just kind of filling in. Okay, then I'm going to come down, and I would like to soften that area up a little bit. So I'm in this area where I want the color to be a little softer. I'm going to take out my 10% gray. Now I'm experimenting now, and I'm going to put a little gray on there. And then I'm going to work the black in, hoping that that just softens or blends that color a little bit down the front. Okay. So we can use this 10% gray as a highlight. So I'm going to put a little 10% gray into those areas where you see in the photograph are light. That should help us blend a little bit. Okay, so now we're going for this real extreme highlight that's over here on her in the bust area. All right, you can see that you can darken the line along the sleeve seam. Okay, and now look here how I'm making a triangle shape where you see this triangle shape. So I look for those. It's pretty strong, so I can take my 10% gray. What the 10% gray will do is blend, but it's going to pull a little bit of color out. Okay, so I'm going to put a little 10% gray, and then I'm going to go and look. There's another triangle shape here. Can you see those shapes that I'm talking about? I mean, and they're not always going to be like a completely perfect geometric shape, but that's how I do leather. I try to find shapes, and I shade those shapes. Okay, then here on the bust, once again, we see both highlight and shadow, but the shadow's not quite as intense, so I'm going to try to soften it up a little bit with that 10% gray. And that's the first area of the bodice of the jacket. Now, under her arm, we can put a little 10% gray to soften a little bit, and then work in some black. And maybe leave a little highlight there. Are you guys with me? We're doing okay? Okay. So can you see those shapes that I'm talking about when in the photograph? Look at the photograph. You have to look at the reference. This reference.
I have trouble with black shade on black. That's correct.
Well, in leather, there's highlights and there's shadows in. So I start with black and I try to find geometric shapes. We're also going to find wiggly lines here momentarily. Okay, so we are going to go to the sleeve next. And what I think we'll do is, so look at this area here. There's a lot of highlight there. So I don't like to leave it completely white though. So but it's almost, see how it's kind of almost an S shape happening in there, and then there's going to be some real strong shapes happening all down the front of the sleeve. So we're going to start with the black. Now you can see up here in the very cap of the sleeve, it's very dark. So I'm just going to go ahead down the side of the sleeve and just straight in with the black. So I'm making that little dark area at the cap of the sleeve. All right, then we're going to start to work in that shape that we're seeing. This is sort of a wiggly S shape. And I can try to soften it and blend it a little bit with the 10% gray. Maybe a good time to pull out the 90% gray too. Let's see if that's going to be too dark. Actually, you know what? Let's get 70 instead. Grab your 70 instead. So I'm going to have like 3 markers in my hand. Because in this area here, where it's not quite as intensely dark, we can still find the geometric shapes, but we'll put them in with the 70% gray. All right, so coming back up with the black, and I've got some 10% gray, and I'm going to try to work that, again, looking for that sort of S shape that's in the sleeve. Okay, down again, inside of the arm, it gets very, very dark in shadow. See in the crease of the elbow, there's a triangle shape. So I'm going to try to put in that triangle shape here in the crease of the elbow. So there's not a whole lot of highlight in there. I don't know if I got the shape quite right up there in the top. Okay, so now we're going to work our way down the sleeve, okay, so look at your reference. See this wiggly shape? It kind of goes all the way down. All right, so we put that strong triangle here. Now we see a U shape that's in shadow, and then another kind of a U shape. So that's about all. In fact, that's what I have to do. I just have to try to look at the photograph reference for leather. It's hard for me to do leather without having something to look at. And I try to find shapes that I can see in there. So so you can see how it's going down the sleeve. I'm going to hit the top of the cuff there and soften it up a little bit with my 10%. And then here in the center of the cuff, there's also shadow, but once again, softened up a little bit. So if it looks too stark to you, use your 10%, soften it up a little bit. Now, ideally, it's best if you can leave the white areas of the paper, but if you find that you've covered too much, we can go back with a little white pencil, or usually white pencil. Paint might be a little too strong, so we can go back and soften things up with a white pencil. All right, so do you need a minute to kind of catch up there with the bodice and the sleeve? Or are you doing okay? Should I turn the recording off for a second? Give you a minute to catch up?